Welcome back to Prophecy Unfolding, where prophecy is truly unfolding. You know, Jesus gave many prophecies. When we look through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, Jesus gave many prophecies, and he gave some astounding prophecies about his return and how the world would look like, or what would be happening in the world as we get closer to his return. But there's one particular prophecy he gave. To me, when I looked deep into this, it became a very strange prophetic word in terms of the connections made in Genesis. And today we're going to have a deep dive into exactly what he meant when he said it'd be like the days of Noah. And the more I dug deep into this, the more profound it became to me. You know, we're going to look at something that Chuck Missler said, but then we're going to get a full understanding of exactly what it means in terms of the days of Noah, and how the correlation, the connection we see happening today, how we're becoming very, very close. Like always, you have to watch this in full, get the full context of this, but smash the like button to get this out to as many as possible, because it may open someone's eyes up to realise how close we are to the return of Christ, as we see these are the days of Noah.
But know this, that Jesus is coming soon, and he will right all wrongs. Beloved, stand firm in your faith, as you witness prophecy unfolding.
And most Christians are not prepared for what's coming. Now, Jesus, in this briefing, also made a very strange prediction. He said, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall the days of the coming of the Son of Man be." Now, what did he mean by that? And this takes us then into this strange chapter, Genesis 6. And what makes this chapter difficult is that most Christians, even serious Christians, I believe, have been mistaught about this chapter. So just do me a favor and try to approach this chapter with an open mind. Let me point out, the views I'm going to share I've held for many years, but I've always regarded them as one of those things that's open to conjecture. Some people have this view, I happen to have this view, and so forth. That's fine. It's only recently I began to realize that, first of all, the alternative views are not really defendable, and I'll show you why. But more to the point, unless you understand Genesis 6, you will not understand much of the Old Testament, much of the New, and certainly have a prophetic blind spot. I'm going to show you a verse before we're all through today that many of us as prophecy teachers for many decades have read and taught and not looked at carefully. It's amazing how these verses that are so familiar to us sometimes will leap out at us with an insight that we've missed for a good part of our intellectual life. But let's go on. Genesis 6, verses 1 and 2 reads as follows. "And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose." Now, I want you to notice a couple of things while I have this text on the screen. I want you to notice verse 1 and 2 are one sentence. That the daughters of men are the daughters that were born unto men in general. They weren't a subset. When men began to multiply on the face of the earth and daughters were born unto them, that's men in general had daughters in general. You with me? Some people try to make, you'll see, I'll get into that later, that the daughters of men are a specific subset. There's no textual basis for that.
I've watched Chuck Missler for many years, and it's given some absolute amazing studies. And this one in particular, to me, was one that opened my eyes up many years ago, made me realise things aren't always as they seem to be when we look at them straight down. But when we break Scripture down, we can get a real understanding of what it is that is happening, particularly to the days of Noah, connection to Genesis 6. Here, to me, is the full connection to all of it.
Jesus gave a key, a prophetic clue, spoken not to mystify, but to awaken. As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. He could have compared his return to any moment in history, but he chose Noah's generation. A time shrouded in mystery, half buried in the early chapters of Genesis. A time most modern believers gloss over, but which ancient writings warned us never to forget. Genesis 6, when man began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took as their wives any they chose. The Hebrew doesn't leave much room for interpretation. Bnei Elohim, sons of God, not kings, not nobles, not merely men. This term is used in the book of Job to describe heavenly beings, angelic watchers standing in the presence of God. These beings crossed a line, and the result? There were Nephilim in the earth in those days, and also afterward. The word Nephilim comes from the root nephal, meaning to fall. The fallen ones, not just giants in stature, but hybrids, unnatural creations. Their existence was the product of rebellion, celestial and terrestrial unions that shattered God's order. These were the same figures later echoed in mythologies worldwide: titans, demigods, heroes of old. Different names, but the same memory: part human, part divine, violent and proud. They were the embodiment of corruption. The ancient book of Enoch reveals what Genesis only hints at. These beings, called the Watchers, descended on Mount Hermon, swore an unholy oath, and took human women. Their children were monstrous in power and appetite, devouring all that men toiled to produce, and the Watchers did more than breed. They taught mankind forbidden knowledge: sorcery, astrology, metallurgy, enchantments, warcraft, and weaponry. Secrets of heaven given to a world not ready or worthy to wield them. This wasn't just sin, it was defilement, an invasion of the created order. Genesis 6 says the earth was filled with violence. But the Hebrew word Hamas also implies lawlessness, bloodshed, and chaos. All flesh was corrupt, not just morally, but biologically. The result? Judgment. God sent the flood, not merely to punish sin, but to purge the earth of something that should never have existed. Only Noah was found perfect in his generations. The Hebrew word tamim, used to describe an unblemished lamb, can also suggest genetic purity. Noah was not contaminated by the Nephilim incursion, and so he and his family entered the ark. But the story doesn't end there. Genesis says, and also afterward, after the floodwaters receded, the giants returned. Not by accident, but by intent. They show up in the land of Canaan, the Rephaim, Anakim, and other tribes the Israelites were commanded to drive out. Goliath of Gath was one of them. Og of Bashan was another. So where are we now? In the days of Noah, there was a global obsession with altering God's creation. Today we edit genes, create synthetic DNA, and blur the lines between man and machine. Scientists speak openly of directed evolution, post-humanism, and merging with artificial intelligence. Ancient structures, megaliths too large for modern cranes, hint at forgotten technologies. Skulls with elongated features, metallic artifacts in rock strata, and texts from across the world all whisper, there was more before. The same spirit that drove the Watchers is rising again, not bound in form but free in influence. Jesus said it would be as in the days of Noah, a time of eating, drinking, marrying, normal life, but beneath it something unnatural stirring. And then, sudden judgment. But just as Noah was lifted above the waters, a remnant will be lifted again. Not in an ark of wood, but through the rapture, the harpazo, the snatching away of the faithful. The Nephilim were a sign of impending judgment once before. Their return, or the resurgence of their knowledge, may be the signal that judgment is near again. Ancient evil doesn't die. It waits. But so does our hope. When the Son of Man returns, will he find faith on the earth? Or will he find it as it was in Noah's day? Floods may not come this time, but fire will. And only those in the ark of Christ will escape.
You know, as we see prophecy kind of escalating, we see things moving, all we have to do is look around the world and we truly see it's similar to the days of Noah. Christ even alluded that that'd be like the days of Lot. And there was one major connection between the days of Noah and the days of Lot, is that there was an interference of the angelic side. And we can see clearly today the things that have happened over the last couple of hundred years, how advanced humanity has become. It almost feels like something else had interfered or kind of put their influence in, but we're seeing things rapidly moving towards the crescendo, which to us, that what kind of look to prophecy or study prophecy, we know that the crescendo is the return of Christ. Even though we see the chaotic things happening around the world, we know and we have a sense of strength and faith in what Christ has done. Even if you don't know who Christ is and you've never really looked into it, know that what he did 2,000 years ago still stands today, that the chains can't be broke, that Jesus lived, he died, and he rose again from the grave for you and for me. Like always, I finish on a note that even though the world is chaotic, remember, God's always in control, and keep the faith.